Morning. How's everyone doing today? You ready for this week? That's a very mixed response. A mix of murmurs and Today we wrap up our series on lessons from the beginning as we have journeyed through Genesis over the last few weeks. And as we close out with the life of Joseph. The things that he went through, the things that he accomplished, the things that happened to him and his response to it. And so I felt that an appropriate name for this was simply good from bad. Because it's not all that unusual to hear someone talk about something bad as if it were really a good thing all along in disguise because it turned out good in the end. But in fact, that can be a very dangerous way to begin. In Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 20, Isaiah says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." We cannot call we cannot call evil of any kind good. And we cannot call good of any kind evil. It's not something that we are allowed to do as God's people. But what we can know, what we can say is that our God is a redeeming God. One who takes things that were bad, were evil, and can use them for His glory, for our good. And Joseph's life is a great example of this. In Genesis chapter 37, we come across the beginning of Joseph's life, and he is father's favorite. I'm not going to go into all the details. Chances are we know most of this, but I'll cover the big points. And Jacob gives his favorite son a beautiful coat. He is obviously the favorite, and playing favorites with your children is a whole different set of sermons. Don't do it, it's bad. Good? But it gets to the point where Jacob sends Joseph's 10 older brothers out to go work. For whatever reason, Joseph gets to stay home. But he decides, hey, I need Joseph to go check on his brothers, see how they're doing. So he goes and sends them out. And this is not like into the backyard. They were shepherds. They had to travel with the flocks some distance to keep them fed where they could get grass, where it wasn't eaten down all the way. So Joseph goes out, and as he's going, his brothers get this idea. Say, hey, this is Dad's favorite. Let's just kill him and be done with it. Tired of his dreams, tired of him saying that, we're all going to end up bowing down to him. This is ridiculous. Let's kill him and get it done with. Reuben, the oldest, has a bit more clear head than the other. Says, no, we're not going to do that. He wants to save Joseph's life here. So he says, hey, let's just toss him into a pit, teach him, and we'll figure out what to do later. Reuben kind of gets a bad rap for this. I think he's actually being very wise. He's outnumbered 9-1 here. So chances are, this is Jared's interpretation here, reading Reuben's mind. He thinks, hey, I'll just get him to throw him in a pit. We can say, hey, we taught him a lesson, I'll come back, get him out later, send him home. Seems like a fairly good decision when you're outnumbered. But while he's away, while Reuben's gone, Joseph's brothers decide to sell him into slavery for 20 shekels. Hey, we'll each make 2 shekels each, we'll make a little money by selling our brother to slavers. This is a bad and evil thing. We can agree with this, yes? It is bad and evil to take, anyone, let's say especially a family member, throw them in a pit and sell them to slavers. There's no getting around the fact that this is bad. Their hatred was so great for their own blood, for their own brother, that they sold him to slavers that they don't know what they're going to do to him, and he'll get sold to who knows where to do who knows what. Who cares what happens to him? This could very well have ended up a fate worse than death. But hey, we can make a little money off it, get rid of our brother, and we're good to go. This is a bad and evil thing. A son has been torn from his family and all that he knows. And a father is torn from his son by his own children because they hated him so much. Excuse me. And then to make it so much better, they take this fancy coat that Dad bought him. Say, hey, we need an excuse here. Well, because Reuben comes back and says, what have you done? So they take his fancy coat, kill one of their sheep, pour blood on it, take it to the father, say, hey, is this your son's coat? Not, we found our brother, something horrible happened. Hey, is this your son's coat? Notice the wording they use. And let him come to the conclusion that, he must have been killed by wild animals. So it's now Dad's fault that he believed. So Jacob believes that it's his fault that his son got torn apart by wild animals because he's the one that sent him out. Nothing about this is good. As we continue the story in Genesis chapter 39, we see Joseph as a slave and then a prisoner. I gotta give Joseph props here. He's sold as a slave to Potiphar's house. Potiphar is head of Pharaoh's guard, so he's a person in authority. And Joseph works in such a way, serves in such a way with such integrity that God makes everything that he does prosper. So Potiphar takes him, puts him over his whole household to take care of it. And it says that the only thing that Potiphar concerns himself with this point is the food he's putting in his mouth, because Joseph takes care of the rest. Joseph has shown himself a man of integrity, a man of uprightness in a bad situation. But he's a good-looking guy, and he gets noticed by Potiphar's wife. Who then claims that he tried to rape her. And so Potiphar, doing what any husband is going to do at the minimum, gets him thrown in prison. You hear this, what are you going to think? You're going to get rid of your slave, right? Wife's up here, slave's bottom of the totem pole. And so a false accusation lands Joseph in jail. He is innocent of wrongdoing, yet bad things are happening to him. He's following God, he's living with integrity, he is being an upright person who has proven himself trustworthy. And so when he's in prison, again, give Joseph props here. He works with integrity. He is a man who is trustworthy, who is living uprightly even in prison, to where the guy in charge of the prison, the warden, puts him in charge of the prison, basically. Noticing a recurring theme here. Now he's had injustice done to him, but he's still living rightly before God. And so two prisoners come in. One is the guy who tastes Pharaoh's cup before he drinks it, like the poison taster. The other is his baker. They both have dreams, and they're really disturbed by them. So Joseph's talking with him. They tell him this dream. He says, "Okay, I'm sorry for you, but your dream means that Pharaoh is gonna kill you, and the birds are gonna eat your flesh." The other guy says, "Pharaoh is going to restore your position, but when you get out of here, make sure you remember me, because you know that I'm innocent." And it happens. The one guy is killed by Pharaoh, the other is restored to his position, and it says he forgot about Joseph. Hey, that guy who interpreted my dream and told us what was going to happen, and it happened, I forgot about him. See, every time Joseph starts to make progress, he gets his legs cut out from under him. He's sold into slavery. He works with integrity. He works to be trustworthy. He's following, as far as we can tell, he is following God. Gets thrown in prison. While he's in prison, he works with integrity. He shows himself trustworthy. He's following God. And again, he's forgotten. The man has had injustice after injustice perpetrated on him. This is a bad thing. Injustice is an evil thing. We recognize this in our society. This is why when DNA evidence proves that someone didn't do a crime 20 years ago, we let them go, because we recognize there was an injustice there. Throwing someone into prison for something they did not do is unjust. Forgetting someone who has helped you is unjust. Falsely accusing someone is unjust. Selling someone into slavery is unjust. Lying to your father about what happened to your brother is unjust. It is wrong. It is evil. We recognize this. But despite all of this, he holds faithfully to God and continues to walk with him. And it's easy when we're reading this, because, you can read these chapters in like an hour. But it's easy when you're flipping through these chapters, we see these events just kind of one after the other, and we don't realize that this is a long period of time. This isn't like a week or a month. We're looking at years here where these things are happening to him. But in chapter 41, things change, and Joseph rises to power in Egypt. See, Pharaoh has a couple of dreams, and they're really kind of spooking him. And to make matters worse, no one can tell him what they mean. Pharaoh knows that these are not just like random dreams that you have because you watch too much late night TV. Okay? These are dreams that mean something. Pharaoh knows that they mean something, but no one can tell him what. And so, the guy from prison remembers Joseph. Says, I met a guy in prison who told me and another guy what our dreams meant, and that happened. It happened. You need to call him. Excuse me. So Joseph comes to Pharaoh and says, okay, this is what the dreams mean. For 7 years, there is going to be a crop like you have never seen. There's going to be abundance in this land like you've never seen. But for 7 years after that, there's going to be nothing. It's going to be pure famine. And not just in Egypt, but in all the whole land, the whole region. It's going to be famine everywhere. And so Joseph says, so what you really need to make sure that you do is during those 7 years of plenty, you need to store up and put it in, excuse me, and store it in granaries. You need to track it. So that when those 7 years come, people have food to eat. And Pharaoh basically looks at him and says, you know what? I know just the man for the job. And he points at Joseph. And he makes he puts Joseph in second command over all Egypt. The only one who can override the word of Joseph in Egypt is Pharaoh. And Joseph is now in power. He is married. He has children. In verses 50 through 52, this is his response. To Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God has made me forget all my toil in all my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Joseph recognizes that it's God who has carried him through all of this. He doesn't say it was my goodness, my integrity, my trustworthiness, my hard work that got me where I am today. Because the only way I've survived this is by God's help. So he names his first son Manasseh. He says, for God has made me forget all my toil in all my father's house. How long has it been now? 15, 20 years? Probably. And Joseph is finally given some peace. He is finally able to just kind of let go of that past. For God has made me forget all my toil in all my father's house. I'm away from it. I'm done from it. I can move on with my life. And the second son he calls Ephraim because God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Being in Egypt has not been a cakewalk for him. It has not been a grand old time. But in the land of his affliction, where all this injustice has been perpetrated on him time and time again, God has made him to prosper in it. Excuse me. As we move into chapter 45, we see how Joseph saves his family. I tried to do a lot of research on this part just because I was kind of curious, and it looks like Joseph is around 39-ish when he sees his brothers again. Like I said, 15, 20 years. No wonder his brothers don't recognize him. When they throw him in the pit, when they sell him to slavers, he's daddy's favorite son. Looks like them, talks like them, is like them. Now he's second command of Egypt, a land that he's been in for 15 or 20 years. Sure, he has grown, his looks have changed. I'm sure he's wearing nicer stuff than he was. After several rounds with his brothers, sending them home, bringing them back, in chapter 45, starting verse 3, Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Does my father still live? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. And Joseph said to his brothers, please come near to me. So they came near. He said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years the famine has been in the land. Excuse me. For these 2 years famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house and a ruler through all the land of Egypt. See, Joseph's brothers committed evil, but according to Joseph, it was God sending him ahead to save his people. Does that make what his brothers did to him a good thing all along? I think we need to be careful in saying that. In Genesis chapter 50, Joseph sees God's plans in reverse. Starting in verse 15, when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "Perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil we did to him." So Dad's dead; he can't keep Joseph in control in control anymore. We're up a creek. Seems to be their thought. So they sent messengers to Joseph. They didn't even go to him themselves. They sent messengers to Joseph, saying, "Before your father died, he commanded, saying, 'You shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please, forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of your father.' And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face and said, 'Behold, we are your servants.' Joseph said to them, 'Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me. But God meant it for good in order to bring about, as it is this day, to save many people. Now therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones.' And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them." Their evil wasn't good in disguise. He didn't say, "Oh, well, what you did all along wasn't really that bad. It wasn't wrong. It wasn't sinful. It wasn't evil. Don't worry about it." But it does say, what you intended for evil, when you intended to send me in the hands of slavers, when you intended to lie to our father and tell him that I was dead, when you intended to destroy my life, God already had it worked out in the end. See, the problem with saying that bad things are really good in disguise is that it very easily leads to thinking that says the ends justify the means. Because if something ends up good, then it must be okay if we do something wrong to get there. But that's the thinking of the world. That's the ethics of the world. The world says, well, if there is a young single woman who gets, pregnant, and it's going to make her life more difficult to go to college and get a job and go out and do the things that she wants to do and needs to do to fulfill herself, and then she should have an abortion. She should kill that baby so that her life will be better in the end. It sin justifies the means. It would work the same way if we said, well, there are certain demographics and areas in the country where the crime rate is very high, the murder rate is very high. And if we just went in and executed them all, the crime rate would drop, poverty would drop, hunger would drop, we'd have more money and food to go around, we'd have more jobs to go around. So let's just go ahead and kill all the undesirables. This is where ends justifies the means thinking leads us to. That's why there are countries in Europe that say, well, if we abort all the babies who might have Down syndrome, we'll just eradicate Down syndrome, and that'd be a good thing, so we'll just kill them all. The sins justifies the means. He's calling evil good because we might get a net plus out of it. It's very dangerous thinking. It's a very dangerous line of thought. But while what Joseph's brothers did to him was evil, was sinful, was wrong, God redeemed the evil intentions of his brothers. And God redeemed the evil injustices that were done to Joseph. They were redeemed events and circumstances given purpose and given meaning by the God of all creation, but they could only be seen in reverse. We need to remember and understand that God does redeem bad and evil events and circumstances for the good of his people. It doesn't make bad things good, it doesn't make sin good all along, but it does give us hope and comfort knowing that God can and does give them purpose and give them meaning if we will live our lives under him. Because we serve a redeeming God, not one who rewrites the past, but who rather uses it for our good and his glory. And if we are able to be open and genuine about what has occurred in our lives, then others will be able to see how God has redeemed us. How God has redeemed the bad things that have happened to us. How many times have you heard a powerful witness about someone who was trapped in horrific sin? That God has redeemed them, and they use the bad things that they have done in the past to show others how God redeemed them and how he can redeem others as well. Will we admit that yes, bad things have happened to us, that yes, we have done bad things, but we serve a God who has redeemed those for his purposes? So we could be salt and light to the world around us, so we could reach those who we otherwise could not reach. We need to know and remember what it is to serve, to follow a redeeming God. The world needs to know what it means that we have a redeeming God. There's so many people out there who say, well, I can't be saved. I can't be redeemed. I've done too much. I've been too bad. I've done too many things. I'm hopeless. No, you're not. Joseph's situation was hopeless. If he did not serve a redeeming God. The situation is never hopeless when we follow the God of all creation, when we follow Jesus Christ who redeems all things by the power of his blood. We are not without hope. You are not without hope. Will we be open and genuine about what has occurred in our lives so that others will be able to see how God has redeemed us? Will we show that by how we live? Will we tell that to those who need to hear it? That's the question we have to answer. Will we stand up and answer the call? Will we bring that redeeming message to a world that needs to be redeemed? I hope and pray that we will, and I hope that we will start that today. And that we'll do that every day while we stand, while we sing.